All right, well, we just saw 300 Rise of an Empire, the sequel to the 2006 300 movie. Saw it here opening night in IMAX 3D, and the real quick headline, did we like it? Did we not like it? Who would we recommend it to? Who would enjoy this movie? Who wouldn't? I liked the movie. I liked it more than I expected to. I wasn't a huge fan of the first one. Didn't see the first one in the theater, saw the first one on video eventually, and really didn't enjoy the first one until I saw it with RiffTrax. Like, that was really the only way that one got fun for me. I liked how over the top it was and sort of the humor of that. But this one, it does a better job of sort of scaling the action to where it needs to, when it needs to be really hyped up and amazing it is. The visual effects are great all the way through. But more than that, this movie has a really good mythology to it. It has a really good storyline to it. There's more characters than just Leonidas and a bunch of nameless, faceless people. So I think that has a lot to recommend it. I don't know if I would necessarily say it's a one to like go find in the theater versus waiting to rent it or anything like that. And I don't think I would necessarily say that it's worth seeing it in IMAX or seeing it in 3D, which is how we saw it. And it was interesting. There were some cool effects and all of that, but it also just kind of felt like, I think partly because of the way it was stylized and that sort of thing, it kind of was like watching the movie through saran wrap at some points, where you couldn't really see everything so well. But I think that's also just kind of part of the style of the movie. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked it. Heavily stylized violence, so it's not realistic at all. But we were talking earlier about how the physics of the blood is just like, it's very much like a video game. Very much. There's some really cool shots. I think there's one slow-mo shot in particular that's overused, but I see that in every movie. You'll get a lot of that. This same shot, you'll be like, oh, okay, I've seen that a few times. But the action's still fun, though. If you're going for a fairly simple story and just fun action, lots of stylized violence and lots of severed heads.
Yeah.
This is your movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's...
So do you think it's worth seeing?
I'm kind of torn. It's fun to see. I mean, I just saw it. It was fun to see in IMAX 3D, but like in comparison with other movies, it's not. I think it would be just fine on Blu-ray. Definitely something HD though.
Oh sure,
for sure. Definitely, it's definitely a Blu-ray rental when it comes out then. And I mean, it was fun seeing it in the movie theater, but I wouldn't say it's a must-see at the movie theater.
Yeah, I agree with that. So to get a little bit more into it, comparing it to 300, one of the things that's really unique about this movie, there's not a whole lot of movies that do this. This movie is a prequel, a sequel, and a consecutive movie to the original 300. So the first part of this movie takes place before 300 does, and they go into all this backstory that we didn't get in 300. We get to learn about how Xerxes became the quote-unquote God King. We learn backstory on these new characters that are sort of the main people in the new movie. There's Themistocles, and there's
Artemisia.
Artemisia is the...
Eva Green from Casino Royale.
Yes. She's the one in the trailers that is like swearing vengeance on everyone. And Lena Headey is back as Leonidas' queen. Most people don't remember that she was in 300 because that was before Game of Thrones, but she's Queen Cersei in Game of Thrones, so now people sort of recognize her. And she's back, and she's great in this one. So it starts before 300, then it takes place concurrently with 300. The events of 300 play out probably halfway through this movie or so, like the second act of this movie. And then Themistocles is Themistocles is the hero of this story. He's the main protagonist, but he's different from Leonidas. He's more of a senator. He's more of a politician, and his leadership style is that he figures out that they can use Leonidas' sacrifice to their advantage and unite Greece and bring all of Greece against Persia instead of it just being the Spartans against Persia, or Athens against Persia, that kind of thing.
That's where it becomes the continuation of the 300 story. Picks up from that.
And picks up from that. And it also leaves it to where at the end there's still room for more story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they left that open.
There are still some things that are unresolved. Like, this story really nicely ties a bow with itself. Like, it's very nice and contained. But you could see where they could make a third movie.
Yeah. I was a little worried, like, part of the way into the movie where I thought it was going to lean too heavily on the original 300. There was lots of alluding back to it. But as the movie went on, it became its own thing, which was good. Yeah. Definitely.
And you can see, and I wasn't disappointed at all that they left a couple of things, out there, that there were still, a possibility of more of the story. There's characters that survive that may not get along with each other in the future, and there may still be, problems and that kind of thing.
There'll be room for more vengeance.
There'll be room for more vengeance for sure. And I mean, the other thing is, like, the first 300 movie came out 8 years ago, which it's amazing.
Can't believe it's same here.
It's crazy. It's been that long.
Wow.
And that they would suddenly, make another one. But the thing about, like, the defining thing about 300 is that, everything's heavily stylized. You've got that sort of yellow filter on everything, and you've got those slow-mo for the sake of slow-mo action scenes.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't rely on that quite so heavily. The filter's blue in this one more than it is yellow. And it's more in
the naval, like, ship stuff going on.
Yeah, most of this
it's all on boats.
Most of this takes place on boats, so it really makes it more visually interesting, I think, than 300. You're not just looking at the desert the whole time. There's waves and boats, and a lot of those effects are really well done. And then the other thing they add is there's this blood effect that they use throughout the movie, and it's this sort of blood splatter, very video gamey,
very much, probably on purpose. It's
this blood splatter effect that is, it's a little, like, I don't know, like, it they use it and then they kind of step back from it, but they don't show, like, a whole lot of gore in this movie. So it's kind of this weird juxtaposition of, there'll be an action, there'll be 10 minutes of an action scene, and people will be fighting with swords, and you'll see lots of these, like, blood sprays come out of everybody. And anytime a blood spray comes out of a normal dude, that means he's dead. Like, that's just the end of it. But when there's, like, a real important battle, like when one of the main characters is involved, then there'll be, like, blood spray, and then they'll, like, sever a limb, or they'll sever a head. And the more gore they show, the more important the battle is. It seems to be like the like thinking behind it.
It's a visual cue for how the battle.
But there was this moment, and I started watching for it because it was kind of hard to tell with the with the IMAX and the 3D and all of that going on. It's hard to tell sometimes visually because a lot of the clothing that they're wearing is really dark. And so when they pull a sword across it and all this blood sprays out, like, completely defying physics. Like, blood just goes...
just like a video game, you don't see where the cut is. There's no...
That's the thing. Is I kept looking for, where's the wound? And at first, they were tricking me with the effect into thinking that, well, it's just the movie's dark enough that I can't really see where the wound is, but it's there. And then later... when you pointed out and you said, oh, that's just a flesh wound. Well, there was this guy that gets his leg lopped off, and they really show that and make a big deal out of that. But there's a strike before the leg gets lopped off. So it's like strike across the chest and then strike through the leg. the strike across the chest, there's this huge spray of blood that comes out, and then
But no apparent wound.
right, so they're waiting for your eye to go down and follow it through the leg, which is where all the, you know, all the gore and all the actual effects are. But if you look up at the chest, nothing happened. Like his clothes aren't torn.
Yeah.
There's no visible wound. There's just like this like 3D blood paint spray.
It's interesting. It's like, so as violent as it is, they're also trying to tone it down as well, so you can see more of it without being overloaded, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very much like the blood's just sort of there as it's just sort of a design choice. It's just kind of like part of the costume, more than it is really about like showing someone getting hurt or someone, you know, or pain or anything like that. And it's, I don't know, it's sort of the, you know, like the old Western version of someone just going and dying.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's
Except it's human bean juice.
it's just a guy going like and this huge spurt of, you know, reddish glop comes out
Yeah,
of
it's
him.
colorful.
Yeah,
Scarlet sometimes, and sometimes the light comes through. Yeah, it's pretty blood.
that sort of like
Pretty fake blood.
raspberry jam kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
But yeah, decent movie. The action was good. It had the story I thought was better than the first one. I really liked the character development. I liked the idea of them having a sort of thinking man's leader in this versus just, you know, I'm Leonidas, I always win until I don't kind of person. You know, Leonidas is a very two-dimensional character, and he's really the only like memorable, like if you ask someone to name like on, you know, name 5 people from 300, you might be able to get to like 3 or 4. I can name 5 people from this movie, no problem, and tell you like why they fight, what they're there for.
Yeah,
one
the
of-
motivations are a little more fleshed out.
Yeah.
And all the motivations are but I mean, but at least you see where they're coming
But there's
from.
backstory to him. Like,
Yeah.
we were talking about Artemisia earlier and her character and how,
Yeah.
like, what happens to her.
Well, it's horrible. Like when she's a kid, she sees her family raped and murdered, and then she's gang raped and basically a sex slave for years. So you see her motivation as quite understandable. That's why I was hoping for a little more of a creative ending to that, which we won't divulge. But anyway, it is what it is.
But yeah, and she's a Greek that becomes like a leader for the Persians. Basically, her family's murdered and she's sold into slavery and left for dead, and a Persian sort of takes her in and trains her, and she becomes this amazing
Swordsman and
she becomes an amazing swordsman, and she also becomes an amazing
strategist,
like
and everything.
naval admiral. You know, she's like in charge of the Persian Navy, which for some reason involves a lot of her just like sitting and waiting for naval battles to be over to decide whether she's pleased or not.
Yeah. Which I found out if she's in charge.
Yeah, like her strategy is kind of strange, but her backstory is interesting. Her character is interesting, and yeah, I agree. Like her,
And played well, too.
she does a good job. I mean, she's really
Sultry.
and
And yet deadly.
yeah. I was gonna say she's the antagonist of the movie, you know, because it is kind of this side story. So Xerxes is kind of off to the side, and it's her and Themistocles having this sort of side battle that ends up becoming what happens after the events of the original 300. So, yeah, I like the movie a lot more than I expected it to. It's probably something that I would normally, you know, check out on video or something like that. And if they were to do like, you know, we're talking about other movies that do the second movie takes place before, during, and after the first. That's sort of like what The Godfather Part 2 does. So The Godfather Part 2, they have things that happen before the events of The Godfather Part 1 and things that happen after. There's also this version of that where they put both those movies together in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
So you watch the whole story with scenes from both movies, and they blow it out in chronological order. So you start with, Marlon Brando's character as a young man played by Robert De Niro, and you go chronologically through that until the events of The Godfather Part 1, and then it goes into the other part. They show that on television a lot. And I was thinking while I was watching this movie, if they did that with this and the first 300, if they took both 300 movies and they put them in chronological order, would that be interesting to watch? Would that be worth watching? And I don't think it would. I think it would kind of be a bummer to watch. I think the original 300 part wouldn't really stand up to this very well. I think it would come across as very one note and very almost like 300 is less realistic than this movie. And that's saying something. Like, this is a very stylized mythological story.
Just a little more grounded with character-wise.
A little bit more character grounding. The 300 story is very much like heroes are trained to be heroes that fight to be heroes that die heroes.
Yeah, it's very one-dimensional.
Yeah, there's no arc there. It's just we're heroes until we're dead, and then we're still heroes. And now the hero's blood is all over
Because Sparta. Yeah. Oh, an audience reaction. The audience were entertained for sure.
The audience was having a really good time.
Yeah.
We watched.
It's a couple of funny moments too.
Yeah, there's some levity in the movie. There's a couple of outright jokes in the movie, which, there's a couple of those in 300, but I don't remember them being, particularly funny or anything like that. There's no "this is Sparta," like there's no moment in this movie that's going to become a meme, that I saw that is just like this crazy over the top thing. Yeah. But it was interesting. There were more people at the showing than I thought there would be. This is a midnight Thursday showing, and there was probably 40 or 50 people in the theater with us. I thought it was interesting, too, that before the movie started, they showed trailers for Captain America, Winter Soldier, and then The Amazing Spider-Man, and then the new Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And it was interesting hearing the audience around us react to those trailers before watching the movie. You kind of get this feel for what the audience likes and what they don't like. And the audience was sort of like, they were giving Winter Soldier the benefit of the doubt. They're like, okay, that looks kind of good. Like, I don't know much about that, but okay, another Captain America movies, that's fine. The Amazing Spider-Man one came on, and I've seen this trailer before, but it actually looked better than I've seen it look before. It has this tendency, especially when I've seen it in 3D, to look like really paper doll, like everything looks really flat.
Right.
It's like when something comes across the front of the screen, it doesn't look like it's a three-dimensional
thing. It's like one of those pop-up books with the kitty pictures.
Did you feel like it looked like that tonight? Because I felt like it looked better tonight than I've seen it in the past.
Yeah, and in general, some shots, certain shots I think look like that, where it just looks like flat planes in front, like one of those pop-up book deals.
And like, I would say 90% of this trailer was in IMAX, and the rest was, in the anamorphic. But that trailer looked better visually than it's looked any other time I've seen it, especially in 3D. The audience still really didn't like that trailer, and that's a reaction that I've gotten a lot. I've seen a lot of people, by the end of that trailer, when he's, battling Jamie Foxx in like the very fake-looking CG backdrop, people just lose it at the end of that trailer and they're like, that looks terrible. Because it just looks so fake at the end.
It's so weird because bits of it look great and other bits look terrible.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like, it seems like I don't know. It's almost like they released the trailer and then they've gone back and like fleshed it out, or maybe I'm just paying more attention to it now. I don't know. It definitely looks better than the first installment of that new franchise, but it didn't get great reactions. There was a lot of kind of stifled laughter at the end of that trailer. And then the Godzilla trailer came, and that was one where, and if you've seen these trailers, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, you should check them out. The Godzilla trailers are really cool. What they do is they don't show you Godzilla for the first 80% of the
just bits.
There's just pieces of him, or you hear him, or you just see the aftermath of something that he's done or something he's been past. And it's not obvious that it's Godzilla until maybe halfway through the trailer. So people are just sort of like, what is this disaster movie? And I think what really gets people is that until they know it's Godzilla, like, the mystery is there and the suspense is there, and it doesn't just look like a disaster movie. It's like, what's happening? Like, there's like Bryan Cranston's really shown in this trailer a lot. I haven't seen him before. This must be
he's fresh off his Breaking Bad series, so
I haven't seen a trailer for Godzilla with him in it. I've only seen like the teaser, I guess, like with you know, just some shots of like the army going after him, and just like that split-second shot at the end where they show the monster, but then they show like the gate close.
Yeah. And it's screaming.
And that trailer there's like this mixed response of, there's people that are like, oh, Godzilla, okay, that's cool. And then the other half of the audience is just sort of like, what? Oh God, we've seen that before. Like,
there's no way it can be as bad as the Matthew Broderick one. There's just no way.
No, it can't.
It's got to be much better than that.
It can't. But yeah, I'm sure there's people that won't give it another chance after that. So
looks worth a watch, though.
Looks worth a watch. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for us. Thanks for watching.